Well, I became very interested in birds and nesting back in the late 80s, and I experimented a lot and put up a lot of nest boxes. At one point I had about 200 nest boxes up here. Around 1995 I became interested in using barn owls for rodent control. Began building nest boxes at that point, and it attracted a lot of attention from local growers and whatnot. And the barn owls, of course, do provide an economic benefit in that they eat nothing but rodents, and during the nesting season they'll eat thousands of rodents. You get a couple of nest boxes out there and they can possibly make a dent in your rodent population. In terms of how you put the boxes up, I always used an 18-foot 4x4 and planted that 3 feet in the ground, and that gives you a nest box about 15 feet high. Some of the things that you need to consider when you put a barn owl nest box up is how is that going to impact your farming operation. In the case of grapes, which we have here, it's difficult to do mechanical harvesting when you have a barn owl nest box at the end of the row. They can be placed in other areas, for example near pumping stations, equipment yards. All of those places are good places as well.
I'm a habitat ecologist, a wildlife habitat ecologist, which means I study where animals are and why. And for many years I've been interested in biodiversity and wildlife in particular in farms. So I've done work in the tropics, on birds in coffee farms, and now since 2015 I've been studying wildlife and birds in particular on wine grape vineyards. So it's really a pleasure to be in this vineyard here this morning. A lot of my work has been in the Napa Valley for the last few years, but more recently we're beginning to do some work here in the Central Valley in Lodi. I got connected with Tom Hoffman through the Wine Grape Commission of Lodi. One of the things that I think is really important is to try to understand how farms can be good for wildlife, but also how wildlife can be good for farms. So both sides of that coin. Farms obviously can be good for wildlife because they can provide habitat for biodiversity, but wildlife can also be good for farms, especially certain types of wildlife, if you can attract wildlife to farms that can help control pests. And so barn owls are a perfect example of that, because barn owls eat nothing but rodents. Everything they eat is a pest. In wine grape vineyards in California, the main rodent pests are gophers and voles. And so barn owls will eat lots of gophers and voles every year. In fact, our estimates suggest that a single family of barn owls will eat 3,500 rodents in a whole year. Now, barn owl boxes are not going to be a silver bullet. They're not going to eliminate all the rodents in a farm, but they can be part of what we call an integrated pest management. So farmers can use barn owl boxes as well as other techniques to try to keep rodents under control. One of the things that's most interesting to me about this whole topic of birds like swallows and bluebirds and owls in farms is this idea of a reciprocal relationship between the farmer and biodiversity. Biodiversity can benefit farmers in multiple ways by helping control insect or rodent pests, and also just beautifying the farm. One of the things I've learned working with farmers is, they're here to grow a crop and make a profit and feed the world, but they also just love nature. And so hearing stories like Tom shared about his love for birds, I think is not something to overlook. Sometimes we get really caught up in the economics and the pros and the cons, and I think one of the great advantages of inviting nature onto your farm is that it just makes farming and living great.